So today we're going to go over a weird situation actually I came across on TikTok last night. So I was scrolling through, like you do at night, and then I found this woman that was talking about this weird form that was sent home with her 13-year-old daughter in middle school. And it had a lot of weird questions on it about her pregnancy and stuff like that. I'm going to play the TikTok so you're going to see, what I'm talking about. I want you to keep in mind, you would think that this might be a red state that put this out, but it's not. It's my state, Washington State. Now, it wasn't the entire state, it was 5 schools in 1 district.
My 13-year-old daughter just brought home this student health questionnaire that the school nurse gave to everybody apparently and needs back immediately. But I need you to help me figure out if it's weird or not, because it seems weird to me. It starts out with the standard questions of, do they have any allergies? Do they have asthma, diabetes, seizure disorder, so on and so forth. The things that a school would need to know and be aware of. But then there is another section asking about my pregnancy and her birth. So, was it a normal pregnancy? Yes or no? Please explain. Was her delivery a vaginal delivery, a C-section? Was it scheduled? Was it an emergency? Were there any complications? Please explain. Was she born full term, premature, or overdue? How many weeks gestation was she when she was born? Was she a single birth, a twin, or other multiple triplets? How much did she weigh? And then it's also asking, how old was your baby when they first sat up, alone, unsupported? How old was your baby when they spoke their first words? How old was your baby when they started putting words together, forming sentences? How old were they when they first crawled? How old were they when they first walked? How old were they when they were potty trained? Do you feel that they were on par with the development of other children? Like, why? Why are you asking this? She's 13. She's almost 14. It's halfway through the year. She hasn't signed up for any sports or clubs or PE or anything like that that would warrant a new health questionnaire, which you fill out a health questionnaire at the beginning of every school year. But it's just the standard one, like allergies, asthma, seizures, stuff like that. But why? Why do they need to know all of this? Why do they need to know if she was born by a vaginal delivery or a C-section? If there were any complications with my pregnancy or her birth? How many weeks gestation she was when she was born? Like, I feel like I have never filled out anything like this. Maybe for kindergarten or preschool, questions like this I can justify for when they're very first starting school. But why do you need to know about my teenagers' infancy and toddlerhood? It just makes no sense to me. Maybe this is a totally normal thing, but you guys let me know if you have ever gotten anything like this, because it seems a little weird to me.
Yeah, that is pretty weird. So I remember the first time I watched this, I got very, those vibes from it, and I'm just like, what? Like, why do they need to know this information? Why do they need to know such specific information? Like, it's weird. I don't understand why they would need that, but the plot thickened.
2 days ago, I made a video about a very weird and invasive health questionnaire that my 13-year-old daughter was sent home with by her school. And I never in a million years thought that video was going to blow up the way that it did. And in the beginning, I started answering everybody's comments, but there's close to 9,000 comments on that video now, and there's no way that I can answer every single one of them. So I'm making an update video to answer some of your questions, address some of the comments, and then also give you guys an update about what the school said, because I did call them. The first thing I want to answer is the easiest one, and that is, what state do we live in? A lot of people were saying, sounds like you're in a red state, this sounds like Florida, this sounds like something they would do in Texas. We actually live in Washington State, so do with that what you will. Another one that I got a lot of is, sounds like your daughter's being evaluated for an IEP or a 504 or Title I or some sort of assisted learning program. I also got a lot of, well, these are questions that are on some autism or ADHD screenings. That's not what this is. First thing, my daughter's not being evaluated for any of those programs. And secondly, every kid in the school was sent home with this exact same form. And it even goes farther than that. When I called the school, they told me that they were sending this form home with every kid in the district. So that means elementary, middle school, and high school. A third thing that I saw a lot of people saying is these are HIPAA violations. Now, it's in iffy HIPAA territory. So it's not a HIPAA violation for them to ask. They can ask any questions they want. What HIPAA does is protects your personal information from being distributed or sold or compromised in any type of way. It's a confidentiality thing that keeps your information safe. And so it's not necessarily a HIPAA violation for them to be asking, but I'm concerned about what they're going to be doing with this information. Another thing that I saw a lot in the comments is it sounds like they're compiling information or doing some sort of study for whatever their purposes may be. That's entirely possible, but I don't have any answers to that. But back to the HIPAA thing, it gets into iffy HIPAA territory when how are these records and all of this information being stored and used? Who has access to it? Where's it going to go once I give this back to the school? If I did, which I'm not, don't worry, I'm not going to fill that out. I'm not giving it back to the school. But at the bottom, I missed this in my first video because I reread the whole thing over again. And at the very bottom in fine print, it says office staff, alert nurse if answered yes to any questions. And so that would be getting into that really iffy HIPAA territory, because that means that some other member of office staff, or whether they put together a committee to have it reviewed or whatever, but some other member of office staff is looking over this medical form, making a yes pile and a no pile, and then giving it to the nurse if anybody answered yes to any of the questions about the pregnancy and birth and complications and, you know, things of that nature, which I find really suspicious. I also want to give you guys updates on what the school and the school district said, but this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to make a part 2 of this update. So go check that one out.
So I think your provider's office has staff. It has staff that looks at your medical records. It looks at, you know, if you're seeking an auth for treatment, or, and I only know this because I was a medical biller for 15 years. So I was office staff. Now, office staff is bound by HIPAA laws as well, is when the improper use of medical information that's supposed to be confidential. Having an office staff look at it is not making it a HIPAA violation, because I was in a team of 200 people that fought for reimbursement from the insurance companies for a hospital. So it is a very big team effort. I mean, my specific team was like 80 people, but there's other people that help, like in the reimbursement, like there's payment processing and stuff like that. That's all part of it, like, because they all have to work together. Anyway, yeah, it's interesting, but let's go into part 2, because I just want to kind of go over that just in case, you know, she does go over HIPAA and there's another thing later on.
Here's part 2 of the update for the really iffy health questionnaire that my 13-year-old daughter was sent home with by her school. So in my part 1 of my update, if you didn't catch that one, go back and watch it. I addressed all of the comments that were under my video and answered some questions, but now I'm going to tell you what the district actually said and what the school actually said. So when I called the school, the nurse who was on duty was not the one that passed out the questionnaire. She was more like an assistant to the school nurse. And so she said, I'm sorry, you're not going to like what I have to say. I have no clue. I saw the form. I thought it was weird, but here's a phone number to our head nurse. And so I called her. When I got her on the phone, she really gave me like pre-rehearsed, almost like corporate sounding answers. So when I asked her why they were asking this information, she said, well, it's just a standard form that we have. And I said, well, you're passing this out to middle school and high school students. Like, my daughter's almost 14. Why are you needing to know, if there were any complications with my pregnancy, if there were any complications with her birth, and then all of the information that would be literally in like her birth chart. And she said that they were filling in gaps in information that they have on file for the students. And when I asked her, filling in gaps, why do you need to know about my pregnancy and the birth of my daughter? She's 14 years old. You do not need that information. Why do you need that information? And she said, well, that's an optional part of the form. And I said, well, ma'am, nowhere on there does it say optional. And all week my daughter has stressed how mandatory and important this is that she get back to the school on Friday. She didn't have an answer for that. I also told her about my concerns about HIPAA. So those questions being on the form are not necessarily a HIPAA violation. They can ask any question they want. It's once you give them that information is where HIPAA falls into. It is protected by HIPAA for that information to stay private and confidential with a medical professional. Now, as I said in my previous video, there was fine print at the bottom of that form that I had originally missed in my original video that is directing office staff to give these papers to the nurse if anyone answers yes to any of these questions. So the question, was there any complications with my pregnancy or birth? And then asking me to explain. Had I answered yes to any of those questions, and again, I'm not filling out this form, I'm not going to give it back, so don't worry about that. But had I answered yes, then it would be forwarded to the nurse. So it's being reviewed to somebody else. And then I also asked her how it would be stored, and she basically just told me in the filing cabinet, which is not good enough. That's where it gets iffy with HIPAA. When I asked her who wrote this form, where did it come from? That was another thing that I saw a lot of in the comments, was maybe it was just a generic form that they printed off from the internet and then it just got distributed, which no, that's not the case. It was written by somebody who works for the school district that we're in and was subsequently distributed to all of the schools and then needs to be passed out to all of the kids, and then they need this back from all of the families. They told me this was going out to every kid in the district. Now, I also have another student. My youngest son is also in this district. I haven't gotten this paper from him yet, but they said it was going out in waves, so we'll see. She didn't really have any answers as to why. Why are they asking these questions? Why do they need this information? Why is it relevant? She did not have an answer for me. She gave me the number to the health services coordinator for our school district. I've called that number several times. Nobody's answered. I did leave a message. I have not gotten a call back. So when I do get a call back, I will let you guys know. I will give you another update, but I'm absolutely not going to fill this out. I'm not going to send it back. They're not getting that information about me. They're not getting that information about my daughter. And I'm just going to wait and see if this lady calls me back. A couple people also said that I should alert my local news station about this piece of paper that was sent home because it's super weird, really invasive, and asking a bunch of really personal questions that they do not need to know at all. It has no bearing on my daughter's education or her medical care that would be any medical care that would be given at school. None of that information has any bearing on that, so they do not need to be asking these questions. Part of me is thinking, hell yeah, let's go, let's tell the news, let's take this and run with it. And then another part of me is wondering if that's just blowing it out of proportion. So who knows? But there's an update for you guys. And if and when I get a hold of the health services coordinator for the district, you'll be the first to know. A couple days ago, I made a video about this sketchy health questionnaire that was sent home by the school with my daughter, and you guys had a lot to say. So let's talk about it. First of all, I want to say I am not a doctor. I do not work for the school district. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a politician. I'm just a bartender and a mom. That being said, there's a lot of things that I don't know in this world. And you guys have informed me that I was misinformed on a couple things. So let's clear that up first. One hot topic of conversation is how this form could potentially be bordering on HIPAA violations. And you guys let me know that this is covered under FERPA, not HIPAA. HIPAA protects your privacy when it comes to medical providers. You can pause to read. And FERPA is really similar. It protects your information, but it was written for the school district. And what it actually does is protects your education records. You can pause to read that too. And in some instances, HIPAA and FERPA can both apply, but it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. And this explains it a little bit. Now that you guys have cleared that up for me, I understand all that a little bit better. Another thing that I want to touch on, I 100% understand that the way that you come into this world can absolutely have an effect on the way that you navigate through life. There are many reasons and many scenarios why these questions would be and should be asked, because it could shed a lot of light on some difficulties that some children might be having. But to distribute this district-wide, I think is totally inappropriate. And I've even gotten more confirmation since I put out that first video, because I've had other parents, people that I don't even know, reach out to me, send me messages through TikTok saying that they have gotten this form as well from their schools, which are different schools than the one that my daughter attends. So this thing's going out everywhere. I also had a lot of people ask me, because my daughter has really stressed me that it is mandatory and it is important that she get this paper back by Friday, which is already passed because they're not getting this back from me. But I asked her today, because she said it again to me. She said, "Mom, you did not fill that out for me. I needed to turn that in on Friday." And I said, "Well, why is it so important?" She said, "Because it's mandatory." I said, "No, it's not, babe. It's not mandatory. I don't need to fill it out. I'm not going to fill it out. I'm not going to send it back." And she said, "But I have to turn it in. I have to turn it in." And I said, "Well, who is telling you that you have to turn it in?" And she said, "My teachers." And I said, "Well, who told your teachers that they have to turn it in?" She's like, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "Well, what happens if you don't turn it in? What did they tell you would happen if you didn't turn it in?" And they're not punishing the kids for not turning it in, but they're incentivizing them to turn it in with a pizza party or a pajama day if they get X amount of these back, which I think is messed up on a whole different level. I still haven't spoken to the health services coordinator for our district because today is Sunday. It's been the weekend. Obviously, I can't call her until tomorrow. So if and when I'm able to get a hold of her, I will let you guys know what she said.
Yeah, that's messed up on a whole different level. She's not wrong about that. So I don't know why the form was sent out to the kids. But I do understand the incentivization part of it. So these teachers were probably directed by this other person, which we'll get to who that other person is. I do think it's a little bit of a problem when you're using the children against their parents as a pressure mechanism to get the parents to comply. Which I have a problem with, because I feel like that's an illusion of a choice in a way. Anyway, so, I mean, much like most of life in America is an illusion of choice. But I just, like, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that's happening even in a blue state, but I don't know why. Like, that's the part that people want to know. Why was it sent out? Like, what was the intent behind it? Because intent matters in some cases. I don't know if they can come up with an intent that is good enough to really justify that, because those are some weird and invasive questions.
I finally talked to the health services coordinator for our school district today, and I was not a huge fan of how that conversation went, and I don't think you guys will be either. So when I called and I finally got her on the phone, I started asking her all of the questions. Why did you send this form out? Why are you asking these kinds of questions? Why do you need to know this information? Why is it relevant? Why are you sending it out to the entire school district? And what she told me was, "We're not sending it to the whole district." And I said, "Yes, you are." And she said, no, we're not. And I said, "Well, I have been told by several members of staff that it is going out to the whole district, and I have also spoken to other families within our school district, and their children go to different schools, and they've gotten this paper as well. She literally said, I don't know. I didn't choose to send it out. I didn't tell them to send it out. I didn't make that decision. She literally told me she has no idea what I'm talking about. She doesn't know what form I'm talking about. She's never seen it. Excuse me? I have been told by several people that you're the one that I need to be talking to because you are the one that decides what forms go out and when and why. What information is being collected and what you're going to do with it. I have been told that you are the person that makes those decisions. She said, well, I don't know. I don't know. She said the words, I don't know, so many times in that conversation. It was maddening. And I finally asked her, well, if you don't know and you have no idea and you didn't make the decision and you didn't send this out, then who do I need to be talking to? Who should I be on the phone with? And she told me the principal to the school. First of all, why would a principal be deciding to send this type of form out and ask these types of questions? This falls under the purview of the nurse and the health services coordinator, not the principal. And she just said, well, the principal's in charge of the school, so they make those types of decisions. What? I guess I'm going to try and call the principal tomorrow and see what they have to say about it, but I'm getting the runaround with everybody that I'm talking to on the phone. This person says to call this person. This person says to call that person. That person says, I don't know, it's not my job. So I don't really know where to go from here other than to call the principal, and I'll see what kind of answers I get out of them. But today was just, I got nowhere. And I also want to add a little tidbit about the incentivizing of getting this form back to the school by the students, because that is what's leading them to tell their families that this is mandatory. It's important. I need to get this back right away. I asked my daughter about it again today, and I said, so when you were given this form and told that you needed to have it back and that there was going to be some sort of reward at the end of the day, is this school-wide? Is this a school-wide reward? No. They made it a contest between homerooms. Whatever homeroom gets the most health questionnaires back, they're the ones that get the pizza party. They're the ones that get the pajama day. So they actually have these kids competing against other classrooms and other students to see how many they can get back. I'll let you guys know how the other conversations go, and I guess I'm just going to keep working my way up the chain of command.
Now, there's a difference between healthy competition and unhealthy competition. I wouldn't put it on a form to come back. That's weird. So if we get enough of these forms back, so you have to pressure your parents into giving, specifically your mother, because I doubt, your dad would know a lot of this information, the dads, unless they're the sole caretaker, and then they might know some of it. But yeah, specifically, they are pressuring moms to give up some really sensitive information, even if they don't want to, even if it makes them uncomfortable, because they don't want to disappoint their child. And I know parents that do that. They don't want to disappoint their kid because life is disappointing anyway, and I get that. But also, you got to be the parent, like Lauren here. You got to be the parent, and you have to put your foot down, because you have to be like, no, this is not okay. This is not information that they actually need or that I want to give, right? So I'm with her 100%, because I wouldn't fill out that form. That's so invasive. I don't care we live in a blue state. I don't know why it's being collected, but it feels sinister, but it might not be. That's the thing. And she'll touch on that a little bit.
I have a quick update for you guys about the weird health questionnaire that the school sent home with my daughter last week. When I sat down at my kitchen counter and made a simple video asking the question of why are they asking these questions, I never in a million years thought that video was going to blow up the way that it did. It's gone quite viral. So viral, in fact, that I now have multiple news outlets reaching out to me. I have a bunch of local news reaching out to me, online news platforms. I had BuzzFeed reach out to me today wanting to do an interview. And several news articles have already been written on my video and on this topic. So many, in fact, that it has reached all the way to UK media. And that's absolutely insane to me. But the reason why I'm making this video is I have a little bit of new information. So I did some digging to see how this form was being distributed. I was told directly that it was being distributed district-wide. When I was expressing my concern that it had gone out to all of the families in the school, the person that I was on the phone with said, "Oh, don't worry, you're not the only one that got it. It went out to the whole district." So I was told that directly by a staff member. Turns out, after I've done a little bit more looking into it, that it did not go out to the entire district, only a handful of schools. I wanted to correct that fact simply because it is being widely reported on by the media, and I don't want any false information being put out there. I never intentionally said something that was not 100% accurate. I was making my videos in real time. So when I said that it was going out district-wide, it was because not an hour prior, I had been told by a staff member at the school that it was going out district-wide. When in fact, I found out yesterday that it did not go out to the entire district, just a handful of schools. That's how I was getting messages from other families within our district saying that they got the same form. It's being widely distributed when it should not have been distributed at all, but it's not being distributed quite as widely as I was led to believe. It was never my intention to give any misleading information. That's why I'm making this video, to correct that fact. I have put calls into the principal and to the superintendent and to other members of our district, and I'm just waiting to hear back from them. So when I do, I will give you guys a full update video, but I just wanted to come on here real quick and just correct that one thing that I said.
And there she corrects it wasn't the district, it was just a handful of schools. Anyway, so the plot thickens. This is a little bit crazy. Like, this is the kind of story that you're like, this would be in fiction. But we all know that fact is stranger than fiction majority of the time.
I finally have an update about that super weird health questionnaire that the school sent home with my daughter last week. Sorry it took me a couple days to make this update video, but it actually took me a couple days to talk to the people that I needed to get answers from. I use that term loosely. Where we last left off in the story, I was talking to the health services coordinator for the school district, and she knew absolutely nothing. She'd never seen the questionnaire. She didn't know why it went out. She had no answers for me. She told me that I needed to talk to the principal at the school because they're the one that makes the decisions about what goes out to the students. When I was finally able to talk to the principal, he was super apologetic about the whole situation. He also had no idea that this went out. He fully admitted fault, and he told me that he was really embarrassed and that he would be paying closer attention in the future to what goes home with the students. He also said that he was going to be writing an apology letter to all of the families, letting them know that it was a huge mistake, that it should have never gone out, and to disregard the questionnaire altogether. It's a little too late though, because the deadline for the kids to get it back to the school has already passed. And in case anybody was curious, yesterday was pajama day. So anyway, he told me about this third nurse, and I said, well, let's talk to her. And he said, we can't. She's on vacation for 2 weeks and is unreachable. We had a pretty good conversation, and when I got off the phone with him, I still decided to call the superintendent. When I called the superintendent's office, I didn't really get any answers because they also had no direct knowledge of this whole situation. But I must have lit a fire somewhere, because right away, I got a phone call from the health services director of our school district. When I spoke with her, I was asking her the same questions. Why did this go out? Why did this person send this? Why are you asking these questions? Where did this form come from? She said that she's also never seen this questionnaire. It was written by the school district at some point, and the file is dated 2018. But she said that she's never seen this used in schools. And when I asked her about the nurse who sent this out to multiple schools, she also said that there was really nothing that they could do until she got back from vacation. So we're kind of in the same place that we started. Everybody's apologetic about the situation. Nobody knew about it beforehand, and they assured me that nothing like this would ever happen again, and that they were going to be talking to that mystery nurse when she comes back. But this also begs the question of who is supervising these people? Who's monitoring what they're doing inside of our schools? Literally every single person that I have talked to, and now it's like upwards of 10 people, and absolutely no one knew anything the whole time until I started making noise about it. So this nurse took it upon herself to just print out 1,000 of these forms, send it out in multiple schools, and nobody noticed. She went completely rogue and flew under the radar. The lack of supervision opens up a whole other can of worms. I'm still considering going to like a PTA meeting or a school board meeting or something like that, but I have made every single person that needs to be aware of this situation aware of this situation. And the only thing I can do at this point is just still try to get answers, because I still really want to know why she in the first place ever sent this out. But I also think that this whole situation has opened up the really important conversation of questioning what comes home with your kids, questioning what the schools are doing. I don't necessarily think that there was any malicious intent behind this. I don't think it was a big conspiracy to get information from our kids, but I also don't know that it wasn't. I don't know what this person's motives were. And that's what I'm going to continue to try and find out.
And yeah, I agree with her. I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind that it's probably a really dumb reason, but it's always good to keep checking in on it, because what if it is a malicious reason? What if it is a not altruistic, reason? Then you want to know about it, right? So I really give a lot of props and respect to this mom, Lauren, for doing that. I don't know if that's her real name, but it's her handle. It really kind of blows my mind. Actually, it doesn't. Let me back up. I don't know when it was in my life that I realized that most of the adults running the show don't fucking understand what they're doing. Like, they have no actual clue at all. And how it's incredibly rare to find somebody who understands what's going on, and more than their just little tiny department or what their job entails. Someone that knows, oh yeah, this is what's going on. Like, people that can connect those dots and then retain that information. I always found that I can't even find the right word for it. Like, I was so mind blown over it. And I mean, come on. A lot of people are just pretending to be adults, pretending to understand what's going on, and they just don't. You probably understand what I'm talking about. Anyway, so not to go off on a tangent like I just did, but I mean, it just feels off. Even if it's not, it feels off. This form, the form is off, and then no one knowing anything about it. Like, no one having a clue about this. And it's like, that feels wrong to me too. It feels off.
Here's a little follow-up to that update video that I just posted about that sketchy health questionnaire that my daughter brought home last week. A question that I'm seeing immediately a whole bunch is, how did this one mystery nurse manage to distribute this questionnaire to multiple different schools? This story seems really confusing and convoluted, because it is really confusing and convoluted. If you go back to one of my other update videos, I talk about how this questionnaire was sent out to a handful of schools. This mystery nurse oversees multiple schools. She's in charge of the nurses that work in the schools but is under the health services coordinator. So she's above the school nurse but under the health services coordinator, and she oversees multiple schools. And the schools that she personally oversees are the schools that received this questionnaire. I hope that clears it up for you guys. This story and all of the characters in it seem really confusing because it is really confusing, and I have yet to get any straight answers out of anybody.
Okay, so that is it. What do you think? Do you think it's malicious intent? Do you think it's going to be a stupid reason? I'm real interested for when that nurse gets back from vacation. I'm going to be following this account. Feel free to follow her on TikTok. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, night, weekend, and hit the like button and subscribe if you're new, because I'd love to have you.